Repeat that.
Looking good.
We are recording this to the cloud. And last week was Pink Week. The week before was Purple Shirt Week. And then white shirt and black shirt. This week is blue shirt, but I kept the pink going on.
Yes.
So I'm keeping the pink the first 3 days anyhow until I run out of pink ties.
It's working for
you. And my sister said I looked good in pink, so I went to Vietnam and got 2 pink suits. So
I've seen at least one of them.
You have. Are you coming to AECT, Michael?
Yes.
Okay, so I am not wearing a pink suit there. I don't think. Maybe
I expect to probably come a little late though on like Wednesday to Friday.
Okay, I'll be there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I get there Saturday. So it's making a full week out of it. I wanted you to get there Saturday. We can go hiking Red Rock Canyon, you know.
Maybe I could come Tuesday, but I have to.
I'm not for no prayer, but I am giving a speech on Tuesday because we're getting that award for the podcast show. So we're giving a 1-hour talk, and then we're having a celebration after 1:30 on Tuesday. We're having the presentation on silver lining for learning. So this week has been rather interesting because we found out about the podcast award last week, and then also have a new book that's come out. So any of you have my Adding Tech Variety free book, there's now a new version of that book. It doesn't have that title, and a free class on online motivation and helping online learners. And I can send that to all of you if you're interested. That just became available Friday from Sanjaya Mishra from the Commonwealth of Learning. I'm not sure if you met Sanjaya, Michael, but you may have. Okay. So have you heard the Commonwealth of Learning?
From you.
Okay. So col.org, if you haven't been to the site, has many free reports. And in my other class, R692, Sanjaya will visit in week 13 to talk about smart environments. So Sanjaya is in Vancouver. He used to be in Delhi. He used to grade at the Indira Gandhi National Open University, the largest university in the world. I would not want to grade papers.
They used to have courses of 1 million students each.
They had an MBA cohort of 100,000 every year. So you can imagine what marking those papers are like. And Rachel could imagine what studying her favorite say of plagiarism would be like there.
I would assume they automate things.
Now, but maybe not when he was working there 10 or 15 years ago, you know. And then he went off to UNESCO to work for, he went to Paris to work for UNESCO, and now he's at COL. So COL.org has blended learning studies. And today they sent me a meta-analysis of the effect of educational technology. They sent me, you know, blended is best according to these reports. Blended learning is better than fully online, which we've heard before. And it makes sense because it's harder to do. You have to do more planning, and it's more flexible, more convenient. So Michael, you've been at this game for a while yourself in many areas, but in particular, an interest in cross-cultural studies. And you've lived in Saudi Arabia, you've lived in Malaysia, you've lived maybe in other countries too. What countries am I missing there?
I was born in Belgium.
That's right.
Right. So
4 countries.
I'm a Brussels sprout.
That's well put.
But the second longest place I've lived is Bloomington, Indiana.
What's the longest place? New York City?
It would be New York, yeah.
Do we have people on the East Coast here? Who's Rachel's near DC, right, Rachel? Yeah. Someone else is in. Maybe it's my other class has a lot of East Coast people in it.
Isn't Kim Tarvis
right
in New York? She's a Sunni. One of the Sunnis.
She's a Sunni.
She's in Cobleskill,
yeah.
Cobleskill. Yep, I'm in Philadelphia.
Right.
But I'm from Long Island, so.
I'm from Long Island.
Ah, whereabouts? Sorry.
Long Beach.
Ah, very nice. I'm from like the Huntington area.
South
North.
Shore. Yeah.
North Shore here.
Well, there we go. We are immediate connection. So Michael Thomas and I, as I said earlier, before we started, we ran the Chicago Marathon together 20 years ago in October 2002.
That's right. And
he had a
there's
bad
about to be
back.
another one next week.
Oh, I'm not going. I wish I could. I don't know if I could do it anymore. Right? Could you? Have you run any marathons recently?
My last one was 2015.
Okay, that's more recent than me, because that was my only one in 2002. And all I know is I did. Michael didn't. He didn't even practice, and he got through it.
2 weeks before that one, I ran the Indianapolis Marathon with Jamie Kirkley.
That's right.
2 weeks before we did the Chicago with Rob Fischler.
Right. 2 other IU IST alums. And
Right.
Jamie lives 2 blocks from my house still. Rob Fischler's in Frankfurt, Germany, working for so I had a student took 14 years to get his dissertation done. 7 years for coursework, 7 years for dissertation. He created a simulation called Sim Teacher, which was, it took him a while to build the simulation. His wife left him, and during his doctoral program, his mother died on him, so it took him a little while. And when he finished, he got a job as a flight attendant on Southwest Airlines because he wanted to fly marathons, or wanted to fly around the world so he could run marathons in different cities. That was his goal. Right. And so everyone has a different rhyme or reason why they enter a doctoral program. Not everybody do it to become a flight attendant for Southwest Airlines, but it worked for him. Michael, on the other hand, worked for one of the hardest advisors that we had ever in the history of this planet. And he was probably one of the very few people that got through and finished his dissertation in a semi-timely manner, and has helped create what's called Quest Atlantis Project, which is a virtual world where kids clean up the planet and do other kinds of humanitarian kinds of things. And it's a game, and Michael's been involved in gaming for a long time. And now, I don't know if he can pull off his deck of cards behind him and show us the game that he's been working on. You could probably talk about that before you get. And so let's maybe walk through a little bit of your research before they ask you questions. Why don't you talk about several different studies and the qualitative approaches that you took within those studies to analyze and collect data and all those, and then we can ask you more specific things. But first, just explain your gaming background and why you're interested in gaming.
Sure. I'm wondering if do when people talk in this group, do people use PowerPoint?
You can, please, if you've got a couple you want to. Your keynote you gave at AECT a couple of years ago probably would fit real well in here if you've got it.
Okay.
Michael was the pandemic keynote.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Normally, though, you'd have a room of hundreds of people, and you probably had thousands online you didn't even know. The other 2 weeks ago, I gave a talk, and I was making all sorts of funny faces. I may have told the client, and here I found out there were 7,500 people. I just saw the 20 people in the room in China. I didn't see everyone else, around the world. It was an international conference. Just don't know. All right. So you want to call up? You just share your slides.
Yeah, it's coming up. But let me introduce myself a little bit.
I'm sorry.
As Kurt said, I'm an alum of Indiana. I did 5 degrees at Indiana University, very happily.
Tell us what those were.
I did a bachelor's degree in music. That's how I first went to Indiana to attend the School of Music. And I was a jazz major in the School of Music in Indiana. But then after that, I did a master's in applied linguistics, and then on the basis of an applied linguistics master's, I became a teacher, and I became a teacher in New York City public schools. And then shortly after starting that, I went to teach ESL or EFL, English as a foreign language, in Saudi Arabia. And also spent some time in Malaysia as well. So after doing that for a few years, I decided, all right, it's time to do a doctoral degree. So I came back to Indiana and started the language education doctoral program in 1997. But that was really the .com boom time. and I was taking some courses in instructional systems technology, and I realized, you know, in order to really get the full breadth of this IST degree, I think I have to do the full core. And at that time, there was a face-to-face core that was a very intensive experience. And
Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah. So
people commiserate with each other about it, you know.
Yeah, and I did a master's in language ed and in IST, and then a double major PhD in language education and IST. My advisor for the IST part was Sasha Barab, who at the time was a brand new assistant professor, bursting with energy, and you know, a very bright, interesting person, and had us, you know, working all day
And all night
and night on a variety of projects. So anyway, I had a great experience in Bloomington. I haven't been there in several years, but great memories with that. So after that, I started working in instructional technology and instructional design. And I've been at a number of different universities, including University of Oklahoma, UW-Madison, St. John's University in New York, University of North Carolina, Charlotte. And now I'm at the University of Illinois, Chicago in the Department of Educational Psychology. And I teach qualitative data analysis and other qualitative research courses, as well as games, learning, and society. And I'm currently department chair, which which means I get a lot of email. Basically, that's what that means.
So we have one person in with us from the University of Houston. That's Karen,
Uh-huh.
and her advisor is Dr. Mimi Lee, who you went to graduate school with.
Yes, in fact, I used Mimi's computer because we shared a space that was tucked into the back of what used to be called the CRLT, the Center for Research on Learning and Technology.
Right.
And so,
well,
that's right.
You know, she's been promoted to associate dean of equity and all these long title, I guess, from what I've read. Is that right? Is that right, Karen?
Correct, yes.
I'm not surprised. Please say hi for me.
Will do.
Yeah. All right. So I guess I've got a few slides here. I'm going to kind of pick and choose.
Yeah.
Going through some of these.
Because these are all dissertation proposal people. So they want to hear about research methods and a little bit of context too, what you're studying, you know, wherever it was taking place. So
all right, I'm going to do some of that. And then I have a few slides from a PowerPoint that I use in class to talk about preparing a dissertation and all of that fun stuff. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. All right, so all right, let me start about here, I would say. So, I mean, of course, we're faced right now with some very, very big problems and very, very big issues. And these relate to climate, issues related to economic concerns, the consequences of globalization, the migrant crisis. And now also we have to, you know, acknowledge that we're again facing the threat of war, of big war with large powers. And so what does that mean for us in the general field of education? I think it means that we have to pay a lot of attention to the impact of our work and trying to do some work that will in some small way empower people for doing the things that they want to be able to do, to be able to participate in all of the in the best flourishing life that might be possible for them. So while I was still at Indiana, I became interested in the notion of culture and how culture functions in the systemic design of instruction, and wrote this article and later other ones about the idea of culture in the systemic design of instruction. And actually, this is a piece that I wrote when I was still doing coursework in my doctoral program. And more than 20 years later, occasionally this paper is still cited. So I say that just to say that with your work right now, don't think that the papers that you write for class are just throwaway things that you just hand into your professor. This went to Tech Trends. Tech Trends is still a very, very good outlet for the things that you write in the general field of the learning sciences, instructional systems technology, instructional design. So for the past about 5 years now, I've been working on a project called SciSec, and that has to do with teaching children about cybersecurity and basic computer science. And I've been particularly working with and interested in African-American communities, which, of course, being in Chicago, right now I'm in the city of Chicago. I live in the city of Chicago. That's a large population, and that is also a group of people who are underrepresented in STEM fields. As a matter of fact, when I got this National Science Foundation grant, I attended a PI's meeting, and there were hundreds of PIs there in Washington for this for the meeting of this grant program. And although there were hundreds of cybersecurity experts there, I couldn't find one other African-American person, not one. There were plenty of people who happened to be from China and India and Russia and Iran, but I couldn't find one other African-American among hundreds. After I got the grant, I was working with my co-PI, Rigel Jimomo, who's a professor of computer science here at UIC. And I said, hey, let's hire some graduate students in cybersecurity. And he said, well, we don't have any. So I said, well, what about some undergraduates who happen to be African-American? He said, we don't have any. So broadening participation has been an interest of mine, and I've been playing with that by using games as a way to enter into this space. As Kurt mentioned briefly, I was one of several grad students who worked on the Quest Atlantis project, which was an online virtual environment and effectively a type of video game. And we implemented this in schools in many parts of the world, several different countries, including Malaysia.
It looks like a friend of mine sitting in the front row. Is
Yes,
that Bonk sitting in the front row?
That is Fong. That's right. Fong Suk. That's right. You recognize Fong.
Saw him
Now,
3 years
by the
ago
way,
in Scotland is the last time I saw him, 3 years ago.
Wonderful. He has now moved to a university in Sabah. He left Penang.
Okay.
He moved over to Sabah. So anyway, part of games involves identity play, which means that you take on the identity and therefore the way of being in the world of someone that you're not. And if you watch children, you'll notice that they do this all the time. I am the storekeeper. I am the the policeman, or the playing cops and robbers. They're taking on a new identity, a new way of seeing the world. And by doing that, they're rehearsing, they're playing around with the ways of being, with the habits of mind, with how they come to know things in this playful identity. And we do this when we play at being heroes. There's action involved with these kinds of games. The games, of course, have to be age appropriate and developmentally appropriate, and very importantly, should have some kind of impact on the world. So again, here in Chicago, and as a Black male myself, the chance of being imprisoned if you happen to be a Black male American is 1 in 3, right? But for all men, it's 1 in 9. For white men, 1 in 17. Latino men, 1 in 6. All women, 1 in 56. For white women, 1 in 111. But 1 in 3. We should be able to do something about that. And broadening participation in STEM fields is what I've been interested in. And so that means designing for resilience. All right, so I'm going to briefly talk about the game that that we created, and it's a game that's kind of similar to Pokemon, or you might be familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh, or Magic the Gathering, or Card Fight Vanguard. These are card games. This is the My Little Pony card game. And these are played ubiquitously all over the place. There's clubs for these kinds of games. And so, my son was really into these games for a long time, and still is, and plays competitively. And he did that a lot when he was a kid, and continues to do it now in his 30s. But I remember at one point when he was in high school, he wasn't doing well in school. He was failing chemistry. And, I went to his room, and he had all these cards lying around. And he said, I just can't do all this chemistry. So I went and I grabbed some cards of his off the floor. And I said, well, what does this card do? And what about this one? And what about this one? And of course, he knew about all of these different cards and what they do. And that was because he used them in a context that was meaningful for him at that moment. So he became an expert. And I said, this is the same thing as chemistry. He said, no, it's totally different. I said, no, it's the same sort of thing. But your sense of the meaningfulness or the relevance of it is a little bit different.
I needed you, Michael. I never took chemistry because I was afraid of the high school teacher.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was a real jerk. He helped create a new cooking method for Oscar Mayer hot dogs, and he was a real hot dog.
It sounds like he might have made some money doing that.
Mr. Bonner probably did, yes.
Mr. Bonner, yeah.
Mr. Bonner. Mr. Bonk avoided him. I needed to play your game.
Right. So, in fact, I think I have an example of a chemistry game. So anyway, the game that we created is called The Crucible, or SciSec The Crucible. And we basically took the existing game, and when I first wrote it, the grant, what I wanted to demonstrate is that these kinds of ideas about how computers and passwords and hacking and social phishing and all these different kinds of things that happen in cybersecurity contexts can be modeled in a game. So there's Jack the Ripper types of attacks, and we basically mocked up this game slowly, working with children in a variety of schools and after school centers here in Chicago. And we started just by testing it without any kind of art, but then later started adding art to the cards. Was able to get a great artist, by the way, from Singapore. And these are some early mock-ups, but then later this developed into more sophisticated ones. I've got stacks and stacks of these cards right here. But this is something that developed over time, and the goal was to try to increase students' knowledge about cybersecurity and basic computer science, but also increase their enthusiasm for the field, for something that they might go into later on. And we created competitions with the children, and I'm talking about middle school age children. Almost all of them were between the ages of about 8 and 12. So you can see that, for example, there are virus cards, right? And then there's things that happen when you play a virus card, and other types of cards that situate the gameplay. The yellow cards are resource cards that players use to augment their hackers. These are the hacker cards, and you can see that the hackers, they've got different stats or different abilities. So a hacker has a tech ability, that's the technical ability of the hacker, and this is how much strength they have in that. The amount of data the hacker begins with, and the object of the game is to reduce your opponent's data to 0. And then their talk, and that's their ability to be successful with social phishing attacks. Those are the kind of attacks that you get where somebody sends you a message and says, hey, my friend, why don't you send me $100? And you say, okay, they tricked you, those are, really the most common kinds of cybersecurity vulnerabilities that we deal with. They're not the ones where somebody does a brute force attack, but tricks you into giving them access to data, to your money or something like that. And then each hacker has a rig or some equipment, and that's how the action occurs in this game. So doing a project like SciSec or like Quest Atlantis or like other projects that involve a lot of design work over time and real world play and interaction with children or adults and in different communities also really provides a wonderful opportunity to do different types of research on the design process and also on the cultures of the communities that engage in the activity. And also you can look at things like learning and the effectiveness of what you're trying to do with the project. So these are different types of cards that exist in the game. Now, one thing that I noticed when we were playing is that most of the hacker cards, originally we had them as sort of like robots or robot animals, android animals. But I mocked up some about the time when the movie Black Panther came out, right? The Wakanda Forever thing. And I mocked up some cards that were hackers that were African-American female characters. And I started playing those with the Black girls in the schools. And the ones that were bored by just using games suddenly became interested because of a sense of identification with what was happening with the game. So I got my artist to start working on some different images and characters that would be appropriate for the game. So we've created the card game. Now the next step, the next NSF grant, is to turn this into a video game that you play on your phone. So I submitted the last grant. Unfortunately, they turned me down. We are trying again to get the money to turn this game into a video game.
Well, you need Sumi because you know Paul Kim probably, right?
Absolutely. I haven't seen Paul Kim in quite a while, actually.
So Sunmi created the questioning system for the Smile program. So she does mobile apps. She did total math at Berkeley. So she created or helped create an app. She does most. So I'm sure I've been thinking to myself all the time you've been saying, I'm sure Sunmi has a bunch of questions for you. I have one quick one. Who does I thought you maybe created the graphic artist. Who did you get again to be the graphic artist?
This is a Singaporean artist, and her name is Sarah. And actually, I was connected with her from one of my students at Wisconsin, who after graduating decided to relocate to Singapore. And as you know, I've spent a lot of time in Malaysia. My wife is Malaysian, and so it just kind of worked out. But yeah, she's a wonderful artist and
brilliant art. Look at the artwork here. It's just amazing. I mean,
right. So she did all of these cards. Yeah, like look at this stuff.
Yeah, all of it.
Really brilliant. And these are the hackers. And we worked for a long time on this, by the way, because it was, what kind of culture and what kind of attitude to convey with these images, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this was kind of the aesthetic that we came up with. But yeah, she's a wonderful, wonderful artist.
So take us through the data here, and what kind of data do you collect, both from a quantitative, in particular from a qualitative standpoint?
So mostly what we did up front was qualitative, to understand what did the children care about in these contexts, and what do they do, and what about design and these sorts of things. But then also we developed pre-post tests to look at knowledge and enthusiasm. And so and what we did was we did the tests, and this is in the wild, which is very very tough, to get all the kids to do the test properly. But we found that at one location, we found that 74% of the students increased significantly in knowledge and 90% in enthusiasm for the field of cybersecurity, and the same thing at another center.
So that's not comparison data; it is increase, improvement
right.
data.
That's what we were able to show, right? Improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we don't have a lot of big data, but this is sort of the state of the the project. This is one of the articles about it. But anyway, that was, or that is, you know, the sort of design project I've been working on. I want to briefly maybe talk about or mention some things about research that I've learned along the way.
Okay, research nuggets, and then we'll go to Q&A from everyone. So
How much time do we have?
as much as until your mouth runs out and you know your lips run dry. So no, if you just 5 or 10 minutes or 15 at the most, and then we
That's good.
need to go to
That's
Q&A.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. All right, a couple comments about.
So this is the cartoon I'm using for all my writing training in here. I'm using the Snoopy writing cartoons. So very good.
All right, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I've really become convinced that most research is writing, and so you know, focus in on the writing as a construction of what's going on with what you're doing, and write if possible every day. Here are a couple of authors, right? Stephen King and Isaac Asimov, who, like you, Kurt, they destroy forests with how much they write. But all the people that I know who write a lot, they talk about doing something regularly. Michael Apple is another person who writes a lot that I know, who writes about sort of left-leaning approaches to education. And
Michael Apple was a professor at Wisconsin where I went to grad school. I
Yes.
circled him in the timetable as the one person I would take a class with, but there's so many great people at Wisconsin to take courses with that I never had a class with them. So yeah, and he's retired, but he's still there. And
he's
hanging
retired,
out.
but he's still there. He's
Yeah.
retired, but he's still there and still active.
Michael used
But
to work
anyway,
there.
he told me,
right.
he told me I'm a very lazy person,
Really?
and
No.
I have to do my writing in the morning.
Uh-huh.
So he said, I sit down every morning and I write 3 publishable pages every day, 7 days a week without fail. So that sounds to me like a lot. 3 publishable pages seems like a lot, but you know, that's what he's gotten up to, and it's been sort of like a consistent kind of practice. Here's a couple points about your dissertation. Some of you might be starting to get towards qualifying exam and start to think about writing a proposal. And so these are the different, like, large sections of a dissertation or even a research article. What is this about and why should we care? Chapter 1, statement of the problem. Research questions. If you ever get lost in your research, or you ever feel sad and lonely, go back to your research questions. They will guide you aright. And then, of course, methods, result, discussion, and conclusions. These are sort of sample outlines, but take a look at this. This is the table of contents from a dissertation for one of my students some years back. And you can see Chapter 1, introduction to the problem. What is this about and why should we care? And he was interested in how narrative is used by game designers in their design work. And you can see here, right, some definitions of what he was using, statement of the problem, purpose of the study, definition of terms, then the lit review. What do we know about this topic? What do we not know? And where is the frontier or the cusp of knowledge between what's known and not known? He has a section here on conceptual framework, or some people say theoretical framework. That's kind of like the lens that you're using to look at the data, to background some ideas and foreground others. And then there's a section for research questions. And then chapter 3, methodology. And he was using a case study approach. Case study is one methodological tradition. often but not exclusively associated with qualitative methods. But there are many others, such as ethnography, that focuses on culture, or phenomenology, that focuses on participant experience, or grounded theory, that emphasizes building theory inductively by doing coding procedures and other procedures that fracture the data in a way that allow it to be reassembled to reveal patterns in the data, or narrative analysis or discourse analysis. There are a number of these different methodological traditions to choose from in qualitative and quantitative research. And then that's it, chapters 1 to 3 for the proposal. And of course, once you do the study, then the next chapter after that will be findings. And then after that, some discussion of the findings about the impact. This is useful to do also, to have some organizing tables. So here on the left, this is a research question. And then consider, what data do I have to collect in order to answer the research question? And then some analysis. What do I have to do with that data in order to answer that research question? And then I don't know yet, but what do I think the answer might be? So by coming up with an imagined answer or anticipated findings, it can help tell you if you got the research question right. This is also another type of organizing table that's useful. And this is for managing your lit review. So he had a table that had about 30 or so Jerome Bruner references, and a concept map for organizing the literature that would inform the study from Jerome Bruner, and then some for others. Some of you may be using software, bibliographic software, and that's very useful for this as well. Something like Mendeley or EndNote or something like that. Yeah, I think I might stop there and move over to some questions, or
Let's go back
maybe
a
some
slide.
discussion.
Let's go back a slide. So I'll be getting to this next week, probably. I won't get, so I have a slide similar, very similar to this. And maybe we can ask you about impact factors in Google Scholar, one of the questions that might come up. Can you go back, maybe about 10 slides? You had 3 on writing. You had 3 on writing.
Yeah.
It was back a ways. And I almost wanted you to stop there, because that's, again, where I'll one couple more. Yep. And one more. No, go forward one. Okay. So if you send us this is kind of, are these your tips on writing, or what is this? Is about writing, or?
This is sort of what writing does.
Okay.
This is kind of how writing functions in the research process.
Okay. And next slide.
Yeah. Writing exercises the ability to see. It shows. To write is to rewrite, right? Writing is a process of writing and writing again.
Yeah, I have the reprocessing model of writing that I published on 30 years ago or so. It's all reprocessing of thoughts and whatnot. And what was this one on?
Writing is thinking.
Yeah.
And this is a quote from Barney Glaser, who died not too long ago, by the way. He was one of the creators of grounded theory. But he wrote about grounded theory, but he was also very interested in writing. And he said, you don't write a study, you don't write a book, you write up a book by bringing together a big collection of notes or memos, and then impose a structure, and then a polished product emerges, just like findings emerge from a qualitative data analysis exercise.
Okay. I didn't, that you went so fast earlier. I didn't know what was on. It piqued my interest. So you can go ahead and hit stop
Kurt,
share.
I'm really interested in your writing process. You do a lot of writing, and That's
Yeah, well, I'll tell you at AECT, then I will, if you buy me a beer, I will tell you anything.
very cool. Very cool. Enough beers.
Enough, yeah, 3 beers, I tell you more. So Sabahat's with us. Sabahat, you have any, it's a Ask Mike Anything night. He's presented on his gaming research. He's presented about his tips and guidelines for doing research and research methodology.
It looks like you have a board also for questions.
We do have a Jamboard.
A Jamboard, yes.
Yeah, so we can go to the Jamboard in a second, but let's start with just opening this up outside the Jamboard. Sabahat, what would you like to ask Dr. Thomas?
Yeah, I came really late. I apologize. I messed up with the hours. I confused.
Well,
the
I did too.
hours.
It's okay.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. I will go back to video. Yeah, about that writing process, I'm wondering people who become, like good writers. I wonder how much of is it like a conscious process of, like I will express myself better, or it's just something unconscious to get better in time. That's something I'm curious about. Like, there's a lot of that, like just unconscious practice that gets better in time, or do you need to consciously be critical of your own writing? How do you see it?
Before you answer, Sabahat's our PhD student in the room. The rest are EED, and she is doing research with Rob Goldstone in the psychology department. So she's doing some pretty heavy duty research over there, and she's not quite. You're not double majoring, are you?
I am actually.
You are double majoring. Yeah. So she is in cognitive science program. If you remember, maybe you don't remember Farhat, Michael. He maybe came after. He double majored. There are a couple other people Lisa Yamagata Lynch double majored. So yeah, the same.
She's at Knoxville.
Yeah, she's in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. So do you have to consciously work on it to improve?
For me, it's a very conscious thing and something requiring a lot of effort. But I do think that it's something that that I've gotten a little bit better at over time. If you ever want to really challenge yourself, there's a website called the World's Most Dangerous Writing App. The World's Most Dangerous Writing App. And what it is a website that gives you a pane to write in. And if you stop writing for more than a couple seconds, it deletes everything that you wrote.
Oh.
Yeah. So the idea is that you set a timer, and I think 1 minute or 5 minutes or so, and you keep writing. So that's not good for all kinds of writing. It's not the kind of writing where you're doing maybe literature stuff, but it is for maybe expressing a thought, right? So, all right, I'm going to sit down and write 100 words on cybersecurity. And I keep going. And then once that time is reached, then it allows you to save it. But if not, then the page starts glowing red, and then it deletes everything.
Wow.
You can Google it very easily. The World's Most Dangerous Writing App.
So Sabahat, you missed the opening. Mike has 5 degrees from IU.
I was a double major.
And he's a double major too. So he started
undergraduate, and then
undergraduate double major. You're a music major. Did you have a second major in linguistics masters?
Right, and then language ed and IST, and then
masters,
IST language ed double major.
Yeah, so 2 doctorates. In effect, you have 6 degrees, sort of, but one's a combined degree. 3 masters, 1 undergraduate, and 2 doctorates. So yeah, he's in the 1 point.
I was in Bloomington a long time.
Anyone else want to open us up before we go to Jamboard? Anyone have something they'd like to ask of Mike? Anything in the world? Sune.
Yeah, it's just a simple thing. That's because I'm interested in game and also cybersecurity. So interesting.
Oh,
So
nice.
did you work with the security expert to design the curriculum? That's because
Yes.
that is really amazing idea about how to do that, you know?
Yeah, right.
Cyber-
When I
yeah,
had the idea, I'm not a computer science or
Right.
cybersecurity person,
right.
but I had the idea that it would probably work. So I went to the computer science department at my university at UIC, and I met with one of the cybersecurity experts, and they have a few. And he was just totally uninterested. He just said, he didn't really understand what you have a game. I couldn't, convey to him what I was imagining. I mean, now I have cards, I have, design, but at that time I only had the idea. And he said, look, I don't understand this, but since you're going for NSF money, we have a new assistant professor who just came, and maybe he'll be interested. So I went and I explained it to him. And though he was a cybersecurity expert also, he also was not interested, but he said, but if you're going to do it, then I'll join. So then when the project was funded and we started to build things and started working with the kids, then he said, okay, now I get it. Once we had some early versions of what it would look like, then he kind of got the idea. So, sometimes it takes like a little bit of development to be able to explain what it is that you're thinking about.
Sabahat, did you hear Michael talk about the gaming project, or did you arrive?
That part I missed. Yeah, that part I missed. Yeah, by the way, I thought that individual consultation was right now, but it's the other.
It's next week. I think next week. Yeah. Yeah, we'll put the schedule up here. Soon we'll put the schedule in the chat so everyone can get their time. So I'll send you an email. So Michael has worked for decades on games, and he's created a cybersecurity game. So Sabahat, you want to tell Michael what your briefly, because we have other questions, but what is your dissertation project? Because it does relate a bit here.
Yeah, kind of related. Simulation and I don't know, I see a lot of literature like simulation and games. So I and my my CAXA advisor Rob Goldstone have been working on statistic simulations. They are not particularly exciting simulations, right? Students learn probability and statistics from that. But we design new kind of simulations, right? Not like histograms like they use, but they're like icon-based simulations. Like if you are, I don't know, collecting samples of, let's say, I don't know, gears, that simulation actually looks like gears rather than histograms. So yeah, that's one aspect of what I'm working in simulation. Gaming is very interesting in that, one thing I'm particularly interested in, in education, for example, generally we want our subjects to be personally relevant to students, right? In, for example, statistics, maths, it would be teach them in context students care about. But I also know in psychology, for example, my advisor, Rob Goldstone in cognitive science, a lot of them argue that those gamifications or personally too relevant subjects actually distract students from what is really important. So I think that's a very interesting tension that would be maybe also relevant in your gamification settings that I'm interested, how personally relevant should instruction be? When is it actually helpful to motivate students, and when is it actually distracting? Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
That part maybe could be relevant. Did ever come up at your studies, at your research before?
I can't say that we've looked precisely at that, but certainly motivation is a huge part of all of this. And I think that that's kind of the nexus of what we're what we're both talking about. Education is about like learning, but it's maybe more so about inspiring. And that learning and that inspiration may not happen in a proximal kind of way. It might be many years later. You know, I think we all might have experiences where we remember, oh, my teacher told me something many years ago, or my parents told me, my grandparents told me something many, many years ago, and only now do I kind of get it. Only now do I identify with whatever that you know, that bit of knowledge or that bit of inspiration was. So I think that's a problem in understanding learning. It's a problem of research, but for me, it's also inspiring because it means that the educator or the designer, the person who tries to design a learning environment, is a person who is inherently optimistic about the future.
And of value.
Yes, and though we may not see the fruit of the tree that we plant the tree. Something like that.
Very well. So, anyone else before we go to the Jamboard want to jump in here?
Actually, that's one of the things I posted on the Jamboard is related to Sabahat, and your question and this discussion is, how do you balance identity play versus representation? You talked about the specific example of the students who were inspired by seeing something like recent and pop culture-y and that they could personally identify with, but you know, part of identity play is aspirational, and part of cybersecurity in particular is that your physical identity, it doesn't matter, or
right, you may not physically see the individual that you're interacting with. Sure.
Right. So I just thought it was interesting because by using some contemporary popular trendy, and I'm not
Sure,
denigrating that, but by choosing something real-ish,
right.
do you limit the aspiration of the
Yeah,
student?
you know, when I first started it, my feeling, it wasn't more than a feeling, was that I didn't want to have the hackers portrayed as human beings. I thought that that it would be better for them to be animal characters, like My Little Pony. You know, My Little Pony characters, they don't have race like humans do. They don't have gender, at least in the same way that humans do. All of these things are sort of like abstracted a little bit. And my feeling about that was that I didn't want to create kind of like obvious propaganda, like, black hacker, you should be a black hacker, black cybersecurity expert, you should be a black cybersecurity expert. So, and so we created those hacker cards like you saw in that way. But then when we actually started, you know, using them in the schools, that's when I started to experiment a little bit. And I thought, you know, maybe I'm missing an opportunity here. So, I mean, I feel like I'm not quite sure yet, but I definitely get a lot of, like among academic people, they're very excited about the human representations. I'm not 100% sure if the same thing is true for the children. I feel that a little bit is there, and both gender and race and color and class, like all these things I think that they do matter, but I don't have enough to say precisely how they matter. So I don't know. One of the grants I wrote was specifically called Black Girls Hack. And it's, you know, a project aiming at the representation. So that wasn't funded yet. So I don't know. Stay tuned.
It will be. Who's got the Kickstarter or the Jujitsu questions?
Oh yeah.
Me.
You had both of them?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
well, so go ahead and ask both of them.
Okay,
ahead.
so for funding, grants are grants are hard to get and often have a lot of follow-up required. So why not do Kickstarter or crowdfunding to get the money to finance development of the
All right,
games in different forms? And one more.
Good
Why
point.
not jump into NFTs? Why aren't you making those cards and the images into NFTs and selling it?
Yeah, both questions that I've been asked, and to the first one, I'm just keeping it real here. I'm in an academic career, right? And so getting an NSF grant, getting an IES grant, or being funded by any federal agency is a big deal for a university. So in my career, I get more bang for my buck with that kind of money, right? You know, I have doctoral students who I want to fund. I have colleagues, ICR money, indirect cost recovery models. I mean, this is how universities, it's part of how universities fund themselves. Universities are funded through tuition, grants, and gifts or endowments, right? And so I'm in the higher ed business, you could say. So that's one reason why I've gone more in that direction. But you know, I have a brilliant doc student right now who's saying the same thing that you're saying, and he's like, you know, do a little bit of both. So so I think that's great. The NFT thing, I just haven't really cracked it yet. I have a close friend who is deep into that, and also cryptocurrency kinds of things. And there are games now that generate funds in crypto, and he has teams of people in the Philippines playing his games and generating money. Again, like, you have to sort of pay attention to that to figure it out. But you know, it's an exciting new world for the designer. I have a daughter who's a low-level influencer on Instagram and TikTok, and you know, she basically does, like, you know, beauty products and things like that, and started an online store. She did a master's in business marketing, just got a job with AT&T, and so she's turned this sort of online entrepreneurship into some, you know, real money. So yes.
So jujitsu question.
Okay, the jujitsu question that I asked, and then Ben asked one too. So I'll ask
Yeah.
mine first. Would you agree that the Gracie brothers are the best jujitsu practitioners outside of Japan?
Yes, definitely, and including Japan also. But I say that as a biased person. So the jujitsu practice that I've been into is one that comes from the Gracie brothers, specifically from Hio Gracie and his son Hickson Gracie. Hio Gracie has passed on, but Hickson Gracie is very much still active and teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so I have a bias for his line. So Jiu-Jitsu is similar to, it's wrestling, it's submission wrestling. I wrestled in, you know, when I was a kid, and it's been, you know, sort of a hobby. So it's submission wrestling, similar to judo. Yeah.
So what does that make you? The black belt, brown? What
I
are
am a
they?
purple belt
Okay.
in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is a middle belt, and that's from about 12 years, or a little more than 12 years of practice.
So Ben's got a question for you.
Uh-huh.
Ben?
I think all my jujitsu questions were answered. My
Belt level, I'm a purple belt.
yeah.
Do you practice
Congratulations.
Japanese? Brazilian. I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they are different.
Awesome. Congratulations. A real quick question on just practice on writing scholarly papers. This might be specific to me, but I have a hard time researching and just doing the reading part and then balancing writing. Have you come across like a ratio that works for you, like sitting to actually write as compared to just doing the research and reading?
That's a good question, but you know, whenever I read something, I have things to write. So you know, I'll pick up you know, a book, and you know, I tend to mark up books a lot with pen, and so you know, mark them up, and then I always have something to write about. So there's certainly you know, a great connection between reading and writing. The types of reading, of course, are different, right? Some things require this much attention in reading, and some, you know, require much more. So if you're reading like something by Michel Foucault or something like that, well, that's really pretty high level stuff. You know, you're reading Homi K. Bhabha or Jacques Rancière, or you know, some of these postmodern authors. It's pretty tough stuff, and you have to read with a lot of patience and aggression, and rest. So when resting, then note, and then note, and then read, and then note. But it's a different kind of writing than writing up some finding that's very quick. So I guess I would say it depends.
I would answer that and say early in the career, you're going to do more reading than writing. And as you move through, you end up doing a lot of writing and reading on the fly. You're reading while you're writing, and you store a lot of articles away when you need them. And when that thing comes up, and you pull those articles out, and you look for the part you need, and you read that part, and you put them back on the shelf. So it's really opportunistic reading. But at the same time, you should be reading things every day, and having an index system of some kind for those, or have articles that you want to read when you have to take a vacation. I have a file called Articles to Read, and it's indexed by topic, that when I revise a syllabus, I might flip through all those articles and pick some out. I won't read them. I include them in the syllabus. So that's a way to store things away, like squirrels storing away, you know, acorns for a winter night, you know. So basically the flash memory sticks in your pocket are just like squirrels storing the nuts away for a later time. And that's what we do as human beings. You know, we've got our flash memory sticks right in my pocket here from ACT. There you go. You know, it is the coin of the realm today. Besides grant money, it's just having access to articles. And that enables you not to have to read so much on the front end, because if you've got a good index system, you can always find and retrieve and read when you need to. You don't have to. When I was in grad school, we didn't have that, and so we had to read a lot, stacks and stacks, before we ever sat down to write. And we had to index them and summarize them and all that kind of stuff. Now it's kind of changed somewhat because of the technologies that wrap around us. Mike, you want to comment on that?
You know, I mentioned that with a lot of my doc students. When I was a grad student, we didn't have the internet. In my first round of grad school, there was no internet, at least not that we interacted with, no World Wide Web. And so, you know, we went to the library, and doing a literature review was a very different kind of experience than it is now. You know, I think sometimes that slow kind of reading can be really valuable, and looking for things in that kind of way, and writing longhand. But I don't know, for myself, I've embraced the technologies and.
Yep. For me, it was an 80-20 thing. It was 80% reading and 20% writing. And now it's maybe the opposite or not quite, it's more like 60-40, 60 being writing and 40% being reading.
Yeah, it's kind of a, I don't know, like you get better with practice.
Yeah.
If you're learning how to play a Mozart sonata, you don't just sit down and do it. It takes disciplined practice over time, or, learning a new dance move or a new jujitsu move or something, it takes time.
So you got 6 degrees, and your first degree is in music. Did you sing, or you play piano? Did you play guitar? What you play guitar though too,
Piano.
right? No guitar?
I do, but
Yeah.
my main instrument was always piano.
So guitar? What else?
Interestingly, when I got my first job in New York City public schools, I was an English teacher, right? But when I went in, one of the first questions the assistant principal asked me was, by any chance, do you play piano? I said, well, I kind of do. And he said, well, that's good, because we have a music teacher here and he's absent a lot. And we need somebody to help the kids with their, do the assemblies, right? We would do, Star Spangled Banner and Lift Every Voice and Sing and, these kinds of things. And we need somebody to play piano. Can you do it? Yeah.
So that
became like a big part of my job.
So that's you're hired. So you're hired. So no, really, guitar, piano. What else can you play? What else have you played? Drums.
Those are the main.
Keyboard.
Yep, sure.
Yeah, and you've written your own music, right? Some.
Yeah, sure.
And recorded, right?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did many CDs of music with Tyler Dodge. Kurt, you might remember Tyler Dodge.
Yeah.
Who was a doc student in the IST program, who passed away some years ago.
Sadly so.
Sadly, yeah. So, but we did many CDs of music together over the years.
Yeah. Other questions for Michael before he leaves tonight? Who wants to jump in and hasn't asked? You have a question for Michael? You have the Chicago connection. He's in Chicago, right next door to you. You can go visit.
Yeah. No, I think this is all really awesome topic. I'm still kind of like finalizing my research right now, so I really don't have any question right now. But yeah, I do live in Chicago, outside Chicago.
Saint Xavier, tell them what your topic is.
Oh, great. I live right by UIC.
I see.
I see.
No, it's not IC, it's UIC.
Oh, I mean, I see.
I know.
He lives in UIC. I see.
Tell them your question, your topic of your dissertation.
So I'm interested in researching the competency required for instructional designer from instructional designer perspective and also from faculty perspective in higher ed. I'm just trying to look at all those articles and also finding time to write those knowledge claims and, the barrier, not the barrier, but the, gaps between the research. So I'm still working on that.
And let's maybe all just wrap around here and tell Michael what your topics are real quickly before we go tonight. Ben, what's your topic?
Yeah, so I support a physician assistant program. And the phenomenon that I'm interested in is half of PA faculty coming in have no background in education. So looking into just how to support them as an instructional designer, or what do they need to know first about education?
Yeah, fantastic.
And Karen, what are you doing?
So good night. So my research, I'm a chemistry instructor. So I am looking at perceptions of online chemistry laboratories.
Wow, fantastic.
Great. There is a lot of star simulations in chemistry, as I showed in my other class last week. They're fantastic. I would have taken chemistry had they existed back when I was in high school. Megan?
Hello. I am a math instructor, but a lot of my research interest revolves around school climate for LGBTQ youth. So that is what I am researching.
Fantastic.
Rachel?
I'm looking at how faculty are being, faculty who don't have other preparations to teach online, how are they being prepared to deal with academic integrity issues related to the online learning environment?
And Aishot?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, hi. I made it back. I'm actually looking at the teacher's perspective of science simulations. So Karen, what kind of overlap? Or everything you read is always, this helps students this way. Yeah, good to know. How about the teachers? How do they decide what to use? What's their own person? What do they say? What's their challenge and things like that? So that's my focus though. So, and I'm a science instructor, so that kind of fits.
Yeah, very cool.
So we'll have to have you and Karen share when we do breakout groups in a couple of weeks. Sume is my TA in here, but she's also doing a dissertation on my other class. You want to explain what your topic is, Sume?
Actually, I'm interested in peer interaction actually after COVID-19 broke out. So actually, I come up with the idea, the use of 3 different, pedagogies. So small group and role-based and guided instructions to promote the peer interaction in online courses. So right now I'm collecting data.
And it's going great well. Sabahat's already explained hers, so we've gotten around to everyone, unless someone wants to make a final comment. Michael, would you like to make a final comment on anything you heard there?
Thank you so much. And I just want to wish everybody, the best of luck with your research. I know it's a hard, can be a hard path, but, when you get into, the business of learning and research, it's not about us, it's about the people that we help with our work. And that might be, it might be a long time in the future, but we're planting those seeds to leave behind a better world.
Very well said. Let's give him a round of applause for tonight. And I am going to stop this recording now to the cloud.